Good afternoon, and thank you for taking a moment to sit with me today to go over this dissertation assignment. My name is Stacy Johnson, and this assignment is for History 901, Professor Carrie Roberts. And what I want to do is try to cover four things. I want to explain my primary research topic for my dissertation, and then try to provide a brief overview of the historiography on the topic. And then we'll move into the gaps in scholarship, and then finally I want to try to explain why I feel like my research is important and significant to overall giving a better understanding and historical narrative to Hurricane Katrina. So the narrative of Katrina, it has evolved significantly since 2005. And this is one of those events where the narrative is actually going to start right in the immediate aftermath of the storm. Actually, I'm going to date it at September 1st, 2005. There seemed to be a coordinated effort between Mayor Nagin of New Orleans, Kip Holton of Baton Rouge, Kathleen Blanco, Aaron Broussard of Jefferson Parish, to hit the media in urgency to try to get help and aid in New Orleans. And what they did was they created this environment of civil unrest, referring to victims as looters, shooters, rapists. And early on, there's going to be some debate on that narrative, as historians and scholars are going to waste no time to debate that fact. So we start off initially with this narrative of civil unrest, and then historians start looking deeper into some comparative analysis to determine who's really to cause. Early on, there are lots of narratives from survivors, stories that comes in terms of, or in different types of modalities. They're producing raps and songs and poems and documentaries, but these things have gone mostly unnoticed throughout the field. And so then by 2006, we get The Great Deluge, which is one of the best-selling books about Hurricane Katrina. Douglas Brinkley does a great job of really changing the narrative and providing a framework that historians and scholars are still using today to kind of study Katrina, and that is this framework of race, class, and intersectionality. So I just want to give really quickly, just for the sake of time, some of the changes that have happened in the narrative and in some of the continuities. One of the major changes is that initially Katrina was seen as a natural disaster. And then as more information and more history comes out, it's determined that indeed it is a man-made catastrophe. We have certain books like Come Hell or High Water by Eric Dyson, which does a really great job of explaining Hurricane Katrina from the moment that it makes landfall until the weakened levee system breaches, and then over into the recovery process. So that's one major change. Another one is there is this increased recognition of the socioeconomic and racial disparities that existed in New Orleans. Andy Horowitz does a really great job of going back in Katrina from 1915 to 2015 and painting this broad picture. Now that doesn't come out until 2020, and that's when we really see this expansion, if you will, in this narrative of Katrina. It's still race, class, and intersectionality, but we've started to see more narratives about gender, genealogy, geography, and climatology, as well as some social justice books. Some of the ones that you see here, Down in New Orleans, from Madron City, Fire on the Levee. These books were all created between 2006 and 2008 within that expanded narrative period, where some of these authors are trying to battle the first narrative of civil unrest and change the narrative of survivors, and then others are just trying to add more to the narrative. Lastly, I definitely want to talk about this continuity. There's always been this growing awareness of long-term effects and recovery challenges. At this stage, we're not even at 19 years past the storm. As more information is coming and the city is beginning to rebuild, there's an opportunity to study more of what's happening with the gentrification in New Orleans. There's ongoing social and economic issues, but all those things have been agreed upon throughout the field. One of the things that has not changed in this narrative is that Katrina caused tragic loss of life and devastation. Though the number of deaths are still debated, even in the health field, there seems to be some consensus that the central aspect of the narrative is that there was a great loss of life and a loss of property and over billions of dollars of damages. There's also been recently, since 2012, lots of stories of heroism and resilience studies. The American Psychology Association began to add resilience studies to their behavioral study analysis, prompting historians to kind of add that into the narrative. as well. And then the one thing, again, most consistent is that New Orleans has stood as a symbol of American culture. However, in the narratives that I have been able to read so far, there's 1,000 books on Hurricane Katrina. I've been able to get through about 112 of those 1,000 books. What I've been able to see is that there's a lack of information in terms of these methods and strategies of resilience. I think if we do a better job at looking at those strategies, then maybe we can even highlight some narratives of some more underrepresented communities. So what I plan to do is to concentrate my book around this narrative between Hurricane Betsy and Hurricane Katrina, kind of unravel this response saga. I really want to hone in on those organizations, those programs that were created after Betsy, immediately in their aftermath and the years after. The levee board is created at this time. We're in the heat of the civil rights movement, and so there's this working together in communities. The Catholic Church, the Archdiocese, has gone through the segregation process, and so the mode and the temperament is a lot different between Betsy and Katrina. And so I really want to focus on what was done between that time, and then I want to evaluate to see if those programs, organizations, people, individuals still existed in 2005, and if in fact how effective they were in Katrina's recovery and in the response to the storm. Lastly, in terms of the gaps in research, where I feel my research will be most needed in providing this comparative analysis. Right now, I have 5 books that I have been going through that talk about this comparative analysis, between Hurricane Katrina and Betsy, which I think is important because it will help us to look at both domestic and international natural disasters, maybe give us some valuable insight into disaster recovery and response. Also, policy and governance is going to be a huge theme of this work. I think further research is going to be needed on policy decisions in terms of government response and the role of governance in a disaster response. So I hope that you guys find this interesting. Again, my title for this dissertation is The Cyclones of Governance, the unraveling of the response saga from Hurricane Betsy to Katrina. Thank you.